Welcome to another special edition of Courageous Conversations for the Let's Talk About Grief Awareness campaign. Joining us are Rachel Pope, author, inspirational speaker and grief coach, and Rebecca Adams, founder and CEO of First Light Widowed Association. Together they share how their personal experiences have inspired the work they do in helping widows navigate their grief and rebuild their lives after loss. Rebecca enlightens us about her association's purpose and the impact it is having on the people it is supporting. Welcome, Rachel Pope and Rebecca Adams. I'd like to just kick off the conversation by inviting Rachel to share a few words.
Thanks, Louisa, and thank you so much, Rebecca, for joining us. Like you, I'm just so passionate about lifting the lid on these conversations, and I just admire, the work that First Light Widow Association does in the community. And, as for me, somebody who has experienced compounded loss, in my life, I understand that deep impact of grief and how it can affect, our capacity for inviting joy back into our lives, finding support, especially as young widows. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey to start, Rebecca, and, what inspired you to start First Light Widow Association?
Yeah, of course, Rachel, and thanks for the chance to chat. So I was widowed in 2013, which it's actually 11 years next week. I lost my husband, Daniel, very unexpectedly to suicide, only 6 weeks after we were married. There was no warning signs, so it was quite a shock for me. At the time, I just turned 33 and we were starting our lives together. We were planning a family, and to say the rug was pulled out from beneath me is obviously an understatement. I was really ill-equipped to deal with my grief. I'd never really lost anyone close to me before. And I think the people around me were really ill-equipped to support me as best they tried. There was a lot of kindness and a lot of compassion and understanding. A lot of people dropping off meals and helping me with the logistics of getting back on my feet. But when it came to understanding the intricacies of grief and rebuilding a life like that, I think I struggled and the people around me struggled. So I went Googling for support, looking for resources here in Australia, specifically to being widowed young, and really just found that there was not much here available. I think I expected to find a fact sheet or a government website or just a guide. These are the steps that you need to take, and really came up a bit short. That may have been my ability to Google during that really active grief as well. But I was really felt like I don't know what to do. I don't know how to start processing some of that really deep loss. My search did lead me to a few social Facebook groups where I started talking to other young widowed people. And I found an organisation in America who were running more formalised programs. So that was really where I guess it started for me, that concept of connecting with others, and looking at more resources around how to navigate being widowed at such a young age. And I found that, I did a lot of counselling. I did a suicide bereavement course, which was fantastic with helping me process the specific loss that I'd experienced and understanding what had happened. And I read a lot of books. I got into crystals and yoga and meditation. I really tried everything. But for me, it was the moment I sat down with another young widow over a cup of tea and just started sharing some of the way I was feeling, and then having that reflected back to me, that was probably the most powerful moment for me in my journey of trying to rebuild and heal. Just that ability for someone to just understand it and validate what I was feeling was just exactly what I needed. And as I said, I had all the support. It just, my sister and my friends and my workplace couldn't give me that. So I wanted to create a space where others could find that, and probably a little bit easier than I did, and started connecting other people in the same way. So the concept kind of creating a charity for widowed people really began there. And then we started thinking about what were the resources and information that we wish we had found at that time. And it all sort of flowed on. So it's been 8 years now since we started First Light in 2016. The first few years were quite slow as we were still working through our own loss, and juggling employment and young families. I have since gone on to remarry and have a couple of kids. So my life now is wonderful, but very hectic. And really we've, in the last probably 4 years or so, things have really picked up and our reach is expanding and our programs have really kind of come a long way.
That's so wonderful. And so I am aware that you have a Camp Widow, and that's where you invite widows from all over to come together. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience and how frequently you run that event?
Yeah, and Camp Widow it doesn't sound like the kind of place that would be very fun to visit for a number of reasons, but it's a program that was created in America by Soaring Spirits and by a really amazing woman called Michelle Neff Hernandez. And I found Camp Widow a year after my loss in 2014. I traveled to San Diego to attend the conference myself, purely out of desperation. As I said, there was nothing really like that here in Australia. So I reached out to Soaring Spirits and said, do you know of anyone in Australia that's doing something like this? And they said, no, but you're welcome to come and join us here. And it was a really pivotal moment for me. Being in a room of 300 widowed people was quite overwhelming, but also very powerful. To just turn to someone and not be the awkward grieving person or the young widow, and like all those hats came off, and I was just Rebecca there with my grief. I'm quite an introverted person, so the idea of sharing my real sort of personal emotions and my innermost trauma with other people was something I didn't think I'd be very comfortable doing, but it was just wonderful. And I saw speakers, so all the speakers and facilitators at the Camp Widow program are widowed themselves. And of course, Rachel, you have participated in one of our conferences here and shared your gifts as well. So I heard speakers who had gone on to navigate their own grief and find ways through that. And that left me with this sense of hope. I remember seeing people who were 10 years down the track and they had lost their person at the very start of their marriage or their relationship, and they'd gone on to still have a really beautiful life. And I thought, I still don't really see that for myself, but I could see other people doing it. And that was really powerful. So I came home from that 3-day conference, very different. I wasn't cured and I was still grieving. I still missed my husband, Dan, but I knew that I wouldn't always feel like that. So that really immersive experience was transformative for me. And I came home thinking, I want to bundle up all the young widowed friends I'd made here in Australia and take them with me because it was just so great. I couldn't stop talking about it. And the founders of Soaring Spirit said, we can't bring everybody with you, but we'd love to help you bring the event to Australia. And my first thought was, that sounds like a lot of work. I probably couldn't do that. That's probably a big challenge. She said, you'll need to create a not-for-profit charity so that you can fundraise, because it costs a lot of money to put the event on. It's expensive to run a 3-day conference for 200 people. All our speakers volunteer their time, which is an incredible contribution, but the venue, there's catering and logistics and publishing and materials that come with the conference. So it took us a little while to really get the idea of how we were going to manage that here. And COVID hit the first year we were planning on delivering our Camp Widow conference. But in 2021, we held our first event here in Brisbane, and it was only a 1.5-day conference while we tested out the format here. And then in the 3 years since then, we've run the full 3-day program. It's a lot of work for our small team. We only have 2 paid staff. A lot of volunteers come together, but we've been able to capture that essence that I experienced as a 1-year-in young widow, and bring together the community and the peer support concepts of the event, and pair that with the tools and resources that come from facilitators and speakers who have that lived experience. So we've had nutritionists, parenting experts, just people with really motivational stories and tools. We've had a dating panel and a relationships panel for those who are feeling ready to dip their toe in that scary pool and have a lot of questions about the logistics of repartnering. It's just the program's quite broad. We've had art therapy, plant therapy, yoga, all sorts of stuff, hypnotherapy. And the way the program runs is that people come in and choose the sessions that are most relevant to them. So we would never put someone who's been widowed 3 months into the dating room unless that's where they felt they wanted to be. For the majority of young widowed people, that thought is a little bit terrifying, but for some, they are really curious and ready to start thinking about that. It's quite an individual experience, as is grief. And just as everybody's story and challenges are different, we create the space for people to find what they need at the conference. So we have keynote events and networking events, but then we have quite often 3 or 4 sessions running at the same time on a range of topics, and people choose where they would like to go. So logistically, it's a huge event to run. At this stage, we haven't been able to commit to hosting the conference in 2025, which was a really tough call. But the fundraising challenge, along with the resourcing challenge for our small team, just became too overwhelming for us. So we're taking a year off to pause and grow, and then hope to maybe make it a biannual event going forward.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And I really do understand, being a leader in a not-for-profit, the challenges that we face to, you know, create these initiatives and then keep them going time after time. And there's often such great demand for it, but it's crucial that we also get the financial backing and support to do it, because we can't rely on volunteers all the time to consistently deliver, particularly in the grief space as well, because it does require a lot of self-care and supervision as well. So I would say you would get quite a few return visitors to your camps. And Rachel, knowing that you've attended Camp Widow, what was your experience?
Yeah, I was sharing, Rebecca, with Louisa, my experience and how, just so you touched on that uniqueness and individuality. And, you know, I've worked with widows all over the world, but I would never say to another widow, I know how you feel, because, you know, comparison and you know, all our relationships are unique to us. And what I admired so much with Camp Widow was all that inclusiveness, you know, that you had all these breakout rooms from all different walks of life and demographics, and first year widows, 10 plus widows. And like you said, that they could just choose where they could sit and be understood, and to not speak or to cry or to laugh, and just walking around. That was the first experience for me. When you described going to the States, I can imagine how overwhelmed you would have been in a room like that. And my experience was just how inclusive it was, and, you know, just providing so many great workshops that people could choose, which, you know, aligned with them, and they could sit in, or they could just sit out, or they could just find somebody and just sit down and talk in the corridor as well. If they did feel overwhelmed and didn't want to attend any of the workshops, there was always just somebody there. You were never alone. And, you know, speaking to guests in my workshop was, you know, that feedback was, we just feel so connected, and it's just such a wonderful experience. And to see those people return, I said to Louisa, you know, I know people would look forward to that, and, you know, to shine a light on the work that you do to try and encourage more communities and organisations to hold support spaces like this for young widows in particular. Yeah, it was a wonderful experience. And I know how huge it is to put something like that together. It's let's just hope that, you know, we can find that support and resources for you to continue, because it's just so important. I love how you touched on your experience newly widowed, Rebecca, with finding things online and finding spaces and support groups. For me, it was a similar experience. I was widowed at 38, 2 small children were 4 and 6. And when I went looking as well, it was overseas. And here in Australia, I didn't find that support for a young widow. And you just kind of latch on to somebody online, or find you know, somebody that's just a little bit further down the track, that gave me hope. And I found One Fit Widow in the States, and I just looked at that, and like you said, I couldn't imagine my life that she was leading 5-6 years down the track, but it gave me hope, and I just held on to that. And similar experience when I, you know, started to write and for my online community, Gifts from Grief, it was just that feedback of, gosh, this is so needed here. You know, we just don't do it well. And Grief Line's mission is to have these courageous conversations, and to let people know that there is support out there. So yeah, my Camp Widow experience was wonderful. Yeah, it's just so great to be in a room, like you said, with people who have that lived experience and understand.
Yeah, I'm so great. I'm so glad to hear that. And you're right, Louisa. I think it may be surprising to people, but we have had people come back each year that we've run it. So they've come back 4 times. And I love the transition or the transformation we see in people, even over one weekend. We see people walk in on that first afternoon and they're shaky, they're teary. We can usually pick them out in the hotel lobby of who's here for their first Camp Widow. And we just try to wrap our arms metaphorically or physically around them and hold them and let them know that it's going to be okay. And the first morning when I open the conference, I ask everybody to just give us a chance, just give it a go. It is really scary, but then when we see people leave on the third day, they're just different people. And I get goosebumps even talking about it now, because watching these people over the weekend go from just so terrified and so devastated and desperate to laughing with others and connecting and swapping numbers. And then on the Saturday night, we have a photo booth and a dance floor and people are up and dancing. And I had someone say to me last year, my person died 7 years ago and I'm generally okay. I'm here now for the social connection because I love seeing my people, but I haven't danced in 7 years. And I've been to weddings and Christmas parties and functions, and I've just been too self-conscious and not happy enough to dance. And she was on the dance floor all night. She said, I just feel so safe here and I feel so joyful because I feel like I'm celebrating the love I can carry forward for my husband, but also the strength within me that I'm quite proud of and that I didn't believe I had at the start. And we're quite often told, you're so strong, I don't know how you do it. And it's not a choice, it's not a strength. It's just people have to put one step forward and drag their way through. So the conference really is about celebrating life, not death. We don't all sit around and share sad stories and just carry the weight of grief collectively, because that just wouldn't be productive. It's about acknowledging that this really, really horrible, earth-shattering thing happened. And sometimes it's the first time people have met another widowed person or said some of the things out loud about their experience. So there's that kind of moment of, oh gosh, here we are. But then it's like, well, here we are, and it is horrible, but it happened. So what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do next? Because they may have died, but we're still alive. And most of us want to still live the rest of our lives and find some peace and joy during that time. So the focus really is on rebuilding and trying to take some steps forward, but celebrating that loss and not having this pressure to, I need to return to who I was, or I need to just be better. So many of us have people in our life who are like, oh gosh, you're such a sad person to be around. When are you going to finish grieving? When are you going to be done? When are you going back to the person I loved? And that person's gone too. So it's about, well, I'm a new person now. And I've never seen another widowed person say to someone who's lost their partner, oh, you're a bit of a pain to be around, or when are you going to be over this? Because we just know. So it's a really nice environment to start exploring some of those ideas of, well, who am I now? And I don't want to be a new person, but I have to be. So what do I want that to look like?
Yeah.
That's so true, Rebecca. That leads me to the next question is, what do you feel are the specific challenges that widowed individuals often face? And you touched on how First Flight, caters and supports those, but what are some of the other specific challenges do you think? You've mentioned the isolation and your people, friends, families who don't know how to support, and that's what we need more education in, is how to support our friends and family through grief. What were some of the other specific challenges you feel that you faced, and how does First Light Widows Association tailor its support to meet those needs?
Yeah, well, I guess we have had access to some studies that have shown that young widowed people, 65% of young widowed people will suffer from impaired functioning, so inability to do everyday tasks. 68% will have mental health complications, and 62% will be financially insecure. So the loss of any immediate family member or close person is obviously devastating, but the loss of your spouse or partner really does touch every aspect of your life, from the moment you wake up and they're not there beside you, to how you go about your day, whether you're parenting or, like in my case, I didn't have children, and I was grieving the fact that I thought I would never be a mum. But the impacts are psychological, their physical health, and your sleep patterns are affected. They're social. A lot of people suffer from either damage or lost friendships or relationships, potentially relationships with the in-laws or immediate networks if you spent time as a couple. And then there's the ability to or the inability to go and participate in social events just because of some of the perceived judgments or uncomfortableness of that. There's financial and employment challenges. At the moment, the standard for bereavement leave in Australia is 2 days, which is just obviously so inadequate. In most times, people haven't even started planning the funeral in 2 days.
Yeah.
It's very hard to return to work. If you were the person who stayed at home, you've lost part of your income. You might be struggling to pay the mortgage. So there's some really significant and practical impacts too around how you just go about every part of your day. So that on top of the layer of grief and missing the person is an incredible challenge. And that's not something that people get over in a matter of weeks or months or sometimes even years. Like it's very hard to rebuild when you're trying to grieve the person who would have supported you through the hardest thing that you've ever faced in your life. And then rebuilding every aspect from how you eat and sleep right through to how you get around to different places, maybe how you get to work, how you manage the kids' schedules, or some of the psychological challenges that if you've sort of all the secondary layers of losses. So as I said, in my case, I thought I wouldn't be a mum, and there was all of this extra stuff that comes from the future. Like you're dealing with the immediate loss in the moment, but all of the things that you're missing out on going forward. So it's an incredibly annihilating and stressful time. And I think the way that we have tailored our support to try and address some of those issues really is around that community building and peer-based support. So First Light is not a clinical resource. We don't have psychologists and grief counsellors. It is really about giving people that validation and the hope that they won't always feel this way by seeing others within our community who found a way forward, giving people the understanding that they're not the only one, because it is, particularly at 33, the only other widowed person I knew was my grandmother in her 90s. I honestly felt like I was the only young widow. And of course I wasn't, but it was nobody around me knew another young widow. So there's this inability to kind of find camaraderie, which we're trying to navigate by building these communities, and then giving people some access to information and resources that it's hard to find when you're grieving. So through our website, we have a lot of information there for widowed people around some practical steps that might be helpful, and also information on people who are caring for a widowed person, whether that's a family member, a neighbour, a friend, information on what's helpful to say, what's not helpful to say, and how to actually be hands-on to help somebody rebuild a life. So there's some really unhelpful comments like, just call me if you need anything. I usually, a widowed person doesn't know what they need, and they're not in the capacity to make a list and then actively pick up the phone and ask someone for help. It just feels like such an overwhelming task and a burden. We're very conscious of the burden that we have on those around us. So one of the tips that we suggest to people is if you're widowed, nominate someone who will answer those questions for you, someone practical and helpful who's going, right, Rebecca needs her lawn mowed every fortnight. So who can do that? Has anybody got the ability to take her kids to their sporting events, or every third Saturday have them for the morning so she can either sleep or cry or get her hair done or whatever she needs to do. So never say, let me know if you need anything. Offer something practical. Like, are you home on Tuesday night? I'd love to drop off some meals. Or here's a voucher for a massage. I'm going to take the kids out for the morning if that's okay. And always if that's okay. We don't want to be too presumptuous or overbearing. So it really is, the support that we provide is about that practical stuff, and then that peer support to just give that moment of, I'm not alone, I'm not going crazy, I'm not doing this wrong, because we all feel like we're grieving in the wrong way. And then that kind of gives people the moment to go, okay, this is still really hard, but I'm seeing other people doing it, and I'm watching how they're doing it, and I'm going to start trying to implement some of these things myself and just take it one step at a time.
For sure. That practical advice is just so necessary. And I know from our experience with Griefline and the resources that we've developed that we provide content information not just for the grieving, but also the people in their network and their community. And those resources are in high demand. What do I say? What do I do? What are the practical things that I can provide and for my loved one who is grieving, and that information is just so required when we live in a community that unfortunately people deal with losses every single day, and death is a reality of our existence. So I think just normalizing that by providing practical information and advice is key. Absolutely. Now, you did touch on the peer and community supports that you're developing. Can you talk through what that looks like outside of Camp Widow? What other services are you working on and providing?
Yeah, so outside of Camp Widow, which is wonderful because it's that face-to-face immersive experience, we do try to deliver that through our local catch-ups program. So we have community members from all around Australia who volunteer to host a morning tea or a lunch in their local area. And that gives people the opportunity once a month to sit down face-to-face and build connections. So these are casual, non-structured events where usually it's in a public place, so people kind of feel a little bit safer going there, but it's also quite private in that sensitive conversations can be had or tears can be shed without attracting too much attention. And our volunteers who host these events have usually attended another event or attended a Camp Widow and experienced some of the support that comes from that face-to-face connection, and are really passionate about passing that on to others and taking it home with them. So that's wonderful. We've got local catch-ups running in various locations in Queensland and New South Wales, Canberra, South Australia, Tasmania, Victoria. So we're always looking at expanding that program as well. And what we do is we support the volunteers by who facilitate the events, by looking after some of the logistics. Everybody who engages with our programs is vetted to make sure that they are genuinely widowed. Mm-hmm. And that sounds really strange, but we have had people reach out and we've seen people join other Facebook groups who don't have the best intentions. There's some misconceptions that widowed people are lonely and wealthy, and they can be quite vulnerable to people with not very nice intentions. And so we make sure that we can validate that everybody is a genuinely widowed person seeking support, so that people feel safe accessing those events. And so we look after all of that admin side of things, and we promote those events without our community to raise awareness that they're happening and get the attendees in, so that our volunteers just turn up and facilitate and be a conversation facilitator and a friendly shoulder. We have an online community, a Facebook group of nearly 1,200 people, I think now. So we've got 1,500 members registered throughout Australia, but a lot of people access our programs and support outside of that. Mm-hmm. But our online Facebook group is, again, heavily vetted and moderated to make sure it's a really productive, helpful, safe place to share, take away any sort of judgment or any negative comments. And that's been a really helpful spot that someone can join 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If they're awake at 2 a.m. and they want to vent about something or ask a question, has anybody got a resource that might help with this? Or what steps did someone take on this particular challenge? Or just sharing some of it's just sharing a win. Or, we just had my person's birthday and the kids did this, or how are you navigating your first Christmas? Because it just sounds horrible. So that online community is great because it takes away the limitations of time and availability and geographical issues for those who are quite remote. And we are expanding on that at the moment to really try and offer some of those more unique spaces. So we've just launched an online forum for men. We have around 10% of our members are men. So we've got about 40 people in this group now, and they're having different conversations in an environment that's a little bit more comfortable for them. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are in our big group as well. But we've found that without generalizing too much, a lot of our widowers take a little bit longer to feel comfortable sharing, not all of them, but some join and just watch, and they're not always as comfortable chiming in or asking a question. However, with this men's only space, they're a little bit more comfortable opening up and sharing, knowing that others maybe have a little bit more ability to relate to some of the things that they're dealing with. We've also launched a very young widowed group for people under the age of 50. Who are experiencing different circumstances, and those who are maybe widowed in their 60s or 70s or 80s, who are retired, their children are grown up, and they're having different challenges. Like maybe they're missing their person at the birth of their grandchild, or they're now planning their retirement holiday on their own, and they're finding that challenging. whereas our very young widowed people are usually either active parenting or processing the emotions that have come with missing out on the chance to create a family. They're dealing with mortgages and returning to work and some of the different life milestones. So we've created that space. We're about to launch a dedicated online space for people from the LGBTQI+ community. We've got a few of those members in our bigger group who have also asked for a more dedicated resource. So that's really the community building side of things. And then outside of that, we also have a program where we have created these newly widowed packs, and they're a hard copy information resource that we send out free of charge. And there are fact sheets on here on different information that's really dedicated to help people through the first year of grieving. And there are a lot of things like how I support my children grieving while I'm grieving myself, getting legal affairs and financial affairs in order. And we've found that sending out hard copy packs, while it feels a little bit antiquated when so much information is available online, the feedback has been that people like having something tangible to hold, to scribble on, to pop in the car or on the bedside table. So much information we find when we're online, we can't refer back to it easily. We can't remember where we read it or what it said, and then we've got to go and find it again if we haven't bookmarked it. Whereas these packs, they're quite high level, and it's really just a landing point. Someone can hold it, and it's something tangible they can put on the coffee table. And we do have a lot of healthcare providers or family and friends requesting packs to pass on to someone in their life who's widowed at the right time. So we're finding that's a really great resource that's a little bit different.
That's brilliant. So if people wanted to donate, because I think these resources are essential and I know that they cost a lot of money. So how would people be able to do that if they wanted to contribute to your organisation so that you can continue to provide these tangible resources, as well as your Camp Widow, as well as your support forums and groups?
Yeah, thank you for asking, because it is certainly the biggest challenge. We've got the passion and the ideas, but funding is always the biggest hurdle. So via our website, which is firstlight.org.au, we have a donation page, and people can sign up to make a one-off gift or a recurring donation. So all donations are tax deductible, and even $10 a month will help us send out. That's $120. That's 8 newly widowed packs a year that we can post out to people who are really struggling to find their feet in that sort of first 12 months or so. So it's quite easy to do. The form's there, it's all secure, and it can be cancelled at any time if circumstances change. So those recurring gifts really help us do a little bit more planning, and then the ability to give a one-off gift is also there. So to fundraise, our fundraising target for our next Camp Widow event it costs us around $60,000 to put the conference on top of ticket sales. They're heavily subsidised. It's the only program we have that does have a fee, but it's around a third of what it actually costs us to run the conference. But we also need, really ideally, another staff member to help us run that, because the two of us, to put a 4-day event with about 40 different mini events happening with a team of 2 is quite challenging, and we have to run the rest of our organisation as well. So strategically, we're working on our strategic plan for the rest of this year. We're revisiting our constitution and our governing documents, and really taking this pause to look at the challenges we're facing as a tiny organisation and some of the building blocks that we need to put down in order to remain sustainable. So some of those bigger funding gifts would enable that, with the extra staff members that we need to really make a bigger impact.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And we will make sure that we include those links in the show notes on YouTube and on the website as well. Rachel, was there anything else that you wanted to ask Rebecca during this conversation?
No, I'm just so grateful for you sharing, Rebecca, because I've just seen firsthand how vital this community and organizational support can be, and finding that community is the first thing, because isolation is, one of the biggest challenges for newly widowed people, is when they don't know where, and when they go looking, like you said, Googling, or it can be overwhelming online. I love that those packs are tangible and something that people can hold and just receive, and be a topic of conversation in their home as well, to have family read it and say, oh wow, I didn't realize that that's something you might be facing, or challenges. So it opens up those conversations for family and friends to support them through that period as well. It's, yeah, I just admire your work so much. It's just amazing, and we just want to shine a light on that today and have that conversation around that there is help out there, that you can find your people, and feel less alone, and also moving forward, just have a little bit of hope that things can be different, and that it's normalizing. What Griefline does is normalizing grief, something that we just don't do well. So all of these conversations just help educate other people too on how to find support and how to support others.
Thank you. And thank you for the work that you're doing. I love the chat and the mission that you've taken to normalise grief and to create that safe space. As a society here in Australia, we just don't do grief well. It's an uncomfortable and quite a taboo topic. And it's something that we will all experience in our lifetime. So thank you for the work that you're doing to create that awareness and support across the broader community.